Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Overcoming Agile Haters. Man, they're everywhere. People who just aren't on board with positive change in the workplace. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Hi, I'm Jesse, and I'm here to share with you just kind of a lunchtime conversation as we wrap up our mornings here in the U.S. time zones. This is the latest live edition of Morning Fuel, and I got to tell you, this is my only caffeine I get to have. I'm on a bit of a detox on caffeine lately, so I need a little bit of sanity. So here we go. Now I'm energized to deal with Agile haters. Man. So here's the challenge. Like, we have either signed up for, initiated, or been mandated to build a better workplace. A better workplace where we have more collaboration, more innovation, more creativity, more quality, better teamwork. That we finally people have a voice in what they get to say and do, and yet people are pushing back on that. It doesn't make sense. Why won't they just do the things that will help them? And so that's what we want to talk about, because I see this happening over and over and over again. I'm Jesse. I've been practicing Agile techniques and Agile methods since the late 90s when I first got my copy of the Pragmatic Programmer. And I started playing around with some like very different kinds of engineering techniques. Then I started using the daily stand-up in my first ever management role. And I've used these techniques to build a handful of companies. So I've been doing this for a while, and yet it still comes up. It still comes up. And so I've got a couple of secrets that I have found to be effective, particularly for the people that have been able to overcome the Agile haters, the Agile resistors. There's 3 secrets. And I want to get into the first one right away. And that is stop explaining, start listening. Stop explaining Agile this and Scrum that and Safe this and Kanban that. And nobody cares. Nobody cares what you care about. They care about what they care about. And so if you find yourself doing, we're going to be writing user stories now, which is better than regular old-fashioned requirements, or you find that we're going to go to the iteration planning, daily stand-up, iteration review, don't forget refinement and grooming, don't forget we have to do our big room planning, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't like what you're saying. When you say ceremonies, I hear more meetings. Here's one. When you say self-managing teams, managers hear chaos and even layoffs. And then when you start saying things like, we're going to be delivering full increment every 2 weeks, testers here, we're going to rush poor quality out the door. And so what you're saying is not what they want. You're a lot of us as Agile champions who particularly come out of an engineering world or a project management world or a product management world, we focus on the tangible stuff. We focus on the techniques and the practices and features. We focus on the things that we can touch and talk to, and we completely forget that we have an audience who has their own needs. And so stop listening, or stop explaining, start listening. Let me give you an example. If you have a team that's just, I don't want to go to your meetings and I'm going to do that. Okay, fair enough. What's the most agitating thing that you have to deal with these days? I'll tell you, this is most agitating. It's rework. I hate rework. I hate having to work on the same thing over and over and over again because the sponsors and the customers and the stakeholders, they don't know what they want. Okay. So why is that so agitating? Because I want to do new and creative things. I don't want to have to keep rebuilding the old thing. Oh, okay. So what if I were to tell you that by spending a little bit of extra time in conversations around the customer journey, around the user experience, what if we were to do a couple of paper prototypes that we could get some feedback on? I know it's not the kind of work we really want to do, but if we do those techniques, we might get more alignment with our customers and stakeholders so that they don't have to do rework all the time. So this is first listening and then suggesting how the techniques that we want to install and implement can solve the team members' problems. Here's another one. Tell me, manager, what's your number one challenge right now? And the manager said, oh, I'll tell you, we're missing dates. And the more we miss dates, the more we impact our downstream distributors. Our downstream distributors are losing money because we can't deliver on dates. Ooh, okay, so date predictability. I get that. Here's what's cool. With Agile techniques, we can pivot and adapt the scope, the feature set, the capabilities of our product in order to meet a firm fixed date. By the way, firm fixed dates, totally possible with Agile. In fact, I think Agile does it better than anybody else. But in order to get a firm fixed date, you have to compromise on something else. So I hear you, management, saying that that's the most important thing for you. So you got to tell us, as we're adapting and pivoting and delivering along the way, what's the non-negotiable? What's most critical so that we can hit those firm fixed dates? So listen to your audience. Your audience has specific pain points. And only after they hear that you hear are they willing to jump on board. There's a great quote that nobody cares about what you know until they know that you care. So nobody cares about your daily stand-ups. Nobody cares about our user stories and our automated testing and our backlog. Nobody cares about any of that until they know we care enough about them such that the Agile that we're proposing directly benefits what they're doing. So be careful about just jumping straight in to iterative, incremental feedback loops. And people are saying, what language are you speaking? And why on earth does it matter to me? To me. Because that's what we're here. We're here to serve the people in our organization. All right, tip number 2. Another reason why you're getting a ton of pushback, a ton of resistance, why people don't want to do it your way is because we need to be agile with our Agile. Let me, have you ever said, well, we have to do this because Scrum says, or we have to do this because Agile says, or SAFe says, or Scrum at scale, or large scale Scrum, or Scrum of Scrum, whatever, or Lean Startup, or Design Thinking says we have to do this. Well, that sounds pretty rigid. So what I hear you saying is Agile means follow the rules. Is that what it was all about? That we have to do it this way in order to be Agile, whatever that means? Well, now we listened to our people in step number 1, and now we know that being Agile is about being more predictable, or about being a little bit more innovative and creative instead of rehashing the same thing over and over again. So now we know that we can adjust our Agile to fit the situation. So for example, Agile says we have to ship an increment every 2 weeks. Actually, no, it doesn't say that. I don't know what document you're reading, but it doesn't say that we have to ship into an operational business operations every 2 weeks something. If, for example, we're in a medical device company and doing that means that we're shortcutting our compliance checkpoints for regulatory regulations. Or perhaps we're in a globally distributed team where we have time zones all across the clock, And Agile says we all have to physically be on the same call every day for 15 minutes, even if it's 2 a.m. for half of our team. Okay, if we were to go back and take a look, there's a lot more agility that is permitted in our practices than we usually assume. Now, I know what you're saying. Jesse, okay, but how do we know? How do we know if we start playing around with our Agile practices, or if we start playing around with these techniques, that we're going to screw it up? And the answer is simple. What is the purpose of the daily stand-up? What is the purpose of a user story? What is the purpose of a velocity measurement? If we know what the purpose of that is, then we can pivot the practice just a little bit to address the pain. So here's one. Let me just tell you real quick. A lot of us struggle with this whole work from home remote thing, not being in the office. And so we're saying we need to turn on the webcams. If your webcam isn't on, you're not collaborating, you're not a part of the meeting, you're obviously not interested in being a part of this team because your webcam is not on. And so my wife was telling me a story about how in her office, there was one team member who just got really agitated about that and went on a 15-minute rant about how people who don't turn on their webcams aren't team players. And this was just a team member. And what was happening there is that her frustration was spilling over because she felt like she wasn't being respected by people turning off their cameras. When in fact, I'm telling you, there's not a lot of daycare around to be had these days, so there are kids running around the background. Or how about the only space that you ever planned in your house to be usable is your own bedroom? You don't want like your naked partner running around in the background during a staff meeting because it's the bedroom and it's the only one. And I don't want people to know I'm dialing in from my bedroom, but this is the only option we have. And so it might be a little bit more respectful to turn the camera off. There's also research that I just shared this week on LinkedIn out of the University of Arizona that found the webcam mandate creates more anxiety, less productivity. So what's the point of the webcam? Because we want the human connection. So the pain is COVID work from home reality. The purpose of the technique is to create that human connection, that multimodal connection or communication where it's visual and verbal, and we get to see the body language and hear the tone. Well, how can we do that? Well, we can start using those chat comments. We can start also taking a look at some asynchronous communication, maybe posting on Slack or on IM in Microsoft Teams. So be agile with your Agile, because the more rigid you are, the more rigid people are going to be in return. The more flexible we are, the more people might be willing to give us a little bit of leeway. Stop explaining, start listening, and now you build empathy. Be agile with your Agile, and now you build a little bit more credibility and opportunity. And then the third secret for the people that I've worked with directly, and I've seen them overcome the haters, is just to be more positive. Be positive about the narrative of the change that we're doing and what we're doing. Cheryl, hey, what's up? And I'm seeing Rick. Thanks, Rick, for chiming in. He mentioned that with respect to Agile, be agile with your Agile. There was a LinkedIn conversation that said maybe your use of sprints is a little bit too rigid and not really achieving the purpose. And so good to see you here, Rick. So be more positive. Here's some catchphrases that I've heard before. We need to change from a command and control culture to a more empowered culture. Implication is all of you as leaders have created a toxic environment and you're not effective as leaders. I hear you saying that you want dates. That's not Agile. Translation. I am the judge of what is and is not Agile, and you do not meet my expectations, and so immediately you and I are adversaries. Another one might be that you're not consistently practicing these practices, and that's super important. So translation is you're not exhibiting discipline, you're not effective in your job, and so a lot of the language we use around improvement isn't around improvement, it's judgment. And so I want to instead invite you to frame the change narrative. Frame the narrative for change. And there's two parts to framing the narrative for change. Give me a second. Part one, acknowledge the pain. Acknowledge the frustration that people are having. I don't understand how to decompose a massive feature into small parts. It's hard. Or, I don't know how to juggle all of my commitments and still make all of your funny Agile meetings. Or, I know that you say that we can't estimate, but if I don't have numbers, I don't have credibility in leadership, and we're going to lose our funding. Acknowledge that. Okay, so I hear you saying that you're under a lot of pressure to be able to to provide a roadmap. Or I hear you telling me that you're super frustrated with all of your overcommitment and that we need to find a way to balance all that out. I hear that. And I know it's going to be super challenging to find a little bit of time here to go to this meeting in order to get on the same page. However, and here is the part two, emphasize the promise. So I acknowledge the pain. I hear it. I get it. And what I'm asking you to do is intimidating and challenging and difficult, and we haven't done it before. Part number two, emphasize the promise. But if we spend a little bit of time to learn how to decompose these big deliverables into small, intermediate chunks that we can kind of assess and analyze, then we're going to minimize rework. If we figure out how to decompose these into smaller pieces, then we'll be able to get some stuff done, finally. And then that's going to build a lot of credibility with leadership, and we might actually get that infrastructure request we've been asking for. I know it's difficult to put together a roadmap. I know it's difficult to put to estimates, and it's super challenging effort. But if we just invest a little bit of time and do speed estimation, we're not going to decompose everything into microscopic pieces. We're not going to be estimating 1,000 stories. Just a little bit of time, do some high-level forecast, order of magnitude. Then we put that into a roadmap. Now we've got more credibility where they'll leave us alone. Emphasize the promise. And that kind of goes back to the purpose of the techniques. So if we're going to be agile with our Agile to pivot a particular practice so that we create more opportunity for the teams to come on board. If we're saying the only way we can be agile is officially following this playbook, and they're not going to follow the playbook, then you're not going to get some agile. Well, Jesse, what is it? You don't understand, Jesse. I work at a place where we have one agile playbook, one official methodology, and we have to follow it no matter what. In fact, we're assessed. We have coaches running around, change managers running around saying, on a scale of 1 to 5, how consistently are you going to your daily stand-up? They're grading us on whether we do things exactly according to the official playbook. And what do you do with that? Well, I'll tell you, you frame the narrative. Yes, PMO manager, PMO executive, CXO, COO, I understand that you want consistent practice. I understand you want agile consistency. I understand that we want to have discipline in our organization. And I've got two teams over here that have bent a few of the rules, and they've laxed on some of those practices and doubled their customer satisfaction numbers and doubled the number of running tested features that they've released. And so I think there's some bright spots of opportunity to learn about how these teams who have kind of bent some of the rules and maybe not done the practices according to the playbook, we might have an opportunity to update the playbook. So that's about acknowledging the pain and what people want, but then framing your advocacy and your agility within the lens and within the frame of opportunity and promise. And I want to tell you a story about. Here it is. I want to tell you a story about Gretchen. Hi, Gretchen. If you're going to watch this or you are watching this, you know who you are. She was working at a medical device company for a while and was rolling out Scrum because her executive told her, you need to fix this organization to be more productive, more aligned, more predictable. And so she had a mandate, and she was all about Scrum. So she rolled it out, and immediately everybody started pushing back. This is not how we do things here, Gretchen. This is just not the way things work in a federally regulated environment. Our industry is not supposed to go this fast. I mean, we don't want to impact the health of people, do we? And not only that, but our people are saying that they're uncomfortable and confused by this process. And, we have to listen to our people. So I think we should push this off a little bit, said every supervisor, manager, director, tech lead, all of them. And it became a war of wills for 2 years. Until finally she said, you know what? Fine. Do it your way. And so we had people scrumming in their own department, database scrum, UI UX scrum, and we had a data team, we had kind of like a back end scrum. And everybody's doing their own little agile thing, and nobody's ever talking to each other. Surprise, surprise. Same delays, same dependencies. And eventually the conversation started shifting. What we need to find ways to scale our innovation practices. Yeah, that's what we need. And then Gretchen heard that, and she said, can you say that again? Yeah, we need to scale our innovation practices to be to be a little bit more aligned. Oh, that's a good point. And she shifted her stance. Instead of explaining Scrum to people, she started listening to what their frustrations were with their hybrid, fake, Agile that wasn't working. And she started listening. And she said, "Oh, that's a good point. What do you recommend? You know what we need? We probably need I don't know, some kind of a process that gets people in the room together. Yeah, we probably need that. Oh, you know what? How would it be helpful if I were to research 2 to 3 options around that? Yeah, that sounds pretty good." And then she came back and she offered 2 to 3 options. And they, I've heard about the big room planning as a way to get people aligned on a quarterly roadmap. Yeah, okay. And now they asked her, Gretchen, would you mind coming up with a playbook, coming up with some training, hosting a workshop, and rolling it out for us? We really need this. Because she listened. She also let them be agile with the agile that they were talking about. And then she framed it all within the promise of their pain and what they wanted. She framed the change narrative. And so I'm super proud of Gretchen. She's one of my favorite clients ever. And this is what we do. We help people of all walks overcome the agile haters, because we're trying to do the right thing here. We're trying to make organizations better. And wouldn't it be great if we finally had the momentum, the recognition, the appreciation for all of that? And that's what we do at Fuel Innovation. So if you want to, please do go to jessefuel.com/mentor. There's a link in the comments that takes you to the same place. Or just go to jessefuel.com/mentor if you want help. If you want to get on the phone and talk to me about you don't understand. That was a really good talk, but you don't understand. My haters are coming from all kinds of angles. And what do you do about this? And what do you do about that? I would love to have that conversation with you, because I believe passionately that we're doing the right thing. And if you would want to share with me your story, I'll give you anything I can on the phone. And if we want to work together, we can work together in the mentoring program that we have. But really, I just love talking about this stuff here on Morning Fuel and on the phone. I want to just give a shout out to Dennis saying Kanban is always an alternative to Scrum, and which is true. But then people get super dogmatic about Kanban, and we have the same patterns of misbehavior, only with a different framework, and. How do you speak truth? Because this time they're going to blame Agile. Yes, and they should. If Agile isn't working, then there's a problem with the Agile champion, not the Agile framework. We know that's been proven over and over again. If the Agile isn't working, then it's probably because you are steamrolling it in, copy paste straight out of the textbook. You can steamrolling it in rather than finding a way to adapt it to people's needs, and probably copy pasting it straight out of the textbook or straight out of what your bootcamp instructor, your Agile certification coach told you. And so a lot of times Agile is not successful because we're not tailoring it to the context, and we're not framing the narrative in a way that's a win-win for everyone. And so, of course, we're going to have haters that shut it down, that block it. And then they're going to blame Agile. So Agile isn't the reason Agile fails. We are. We're the reason Agile fails because we haven't found a way to listen to their needs, tailor and adjust and adapt and pivot the practices to fit the context, and frame the narrative in a way that resonates and inspires people to get past their anxieties and fears and embrace the opportunity and the promise. So Dennis, it's a really good question because it really touches on the key failure point. I find if we can't embrace the haters and empathize and eventually recruit them into the change, it's going to be a long haul. It might not even get very far. So, thanks for listening. I'm Jesse, and this has been our live edition of Morning Fuel. Again, if you want to talk more about this, book a call. I could talk about this for hours, especially if it's about helping you overcome Agile haters. Thanks. Talk to you all next time. Ciao.